Welcome back, dear listener, to another peaceful night in sleep history. Tonight's journey begins over 1600 years ago, on a narrow strip of land where two seas meet, where a lone emperor once stood beneath a wide open sky and imagined a city that would outlive empires. There is no need to remember names or dates. There is nothing here to solve, nothing to worry over. Simply let the words flow over you like warm water, like the gentle lapping of waves against ancient stone, and allow your body to grow heavier, your breath to grow slower, as we travel together toward the birth of Constantinople. Have you ever wondered what it might feel like to stand at the very edge of the known world, at the meeting point of two continents, two seas? It is the early 4th century, and the Roman Empire, though still vast and powerful, has grown tired in its bones. Rome itself, the ancient capital on the Tiber, feels far away now, its marble halls worn thin by centuries of ambition and unrest. The empire is enormous, stretching from the misty hills of Britain to the golden deserts of Egypt, and it has become almost too large for one city, one court, one heart to hold together. And so, somewhere within this vast and breathing empire, a man is thinking. His name is Constantine, and he carries the weight of Rome's future on his shoulders, though tonight, in our story, he carries it lightly, the way one might carry a small stone smoothed by the sea. Constantine has already achieved much. He has already won difficult battles, already secured his place as sole ruler of the Roman world. But conquest alone does not interest him tonight. Tonight, in the quiet of his own mind, he is thinking about geography. He's thinking about the shape of the earth, the flow of trade, the movement of ships and grain and soldiers. He's thinking, softly and steadily, about where the heart of an empire should truly beat. Picture, if you will, a map unrolled slowly across a wooden table, its edges curling gently in the lamplight. Constantine's eyes drift across the western Mediterranean, then eastward, past Greece, past the islands scattered like stones across calm water, until they settle on a narrow strip of land where the continents of Europe and Asia lean toward each other, almost touching, separated only by a slender channel of water called the Bosporus. Here, at this quiet crossroads, sits a small and unassuming town. Its name, for centuries already, has been Byzantium. Let us drift toward Byzantium now, slowly, the way mist drifts across still water at dawn. Imagine the air here, cool and salted, carrying the scent of seaweed and fish drying gently in the sun. Imagine the soft, rhythmic sound of small wooden boats knocking gently against a worn stone dock, their hulls creaking in a slow wooden lullaby. Byzantium in this era is nothing grand. It is a modest port town. Its house is built of pale stone and timber, its narrow streets sloping down toward the water. Fishermen here have lived for generations by the rhythm of the tides, casting their nets into waters that shimmer silver and blue beneath the sky that seems impossibly wide. And yet, despite its quiet, unassuming nature, this small town sits upon one of the most extraordinary pieces of land in the entire ancient world. Feel, for a moment, the shape of this place. To the north lies the Bosporus Strait, a ribbon of dark blue water flowing quietly between two continents, connecting the wild waves of the Black Sea to the gentler waters of the Sea of Marmara far below. To the east, across this narrow strait, lies Asia, its hills rising softly in a haze of green and gold. To the south and west lies the calm, sheltered harbour known as the Golden Horn, a long curving inlet where the water lies still and glassy even when storms rage upon the open sea. And rising gently from this peninsula are 7 low hills, their slopes catching the morning light one after another, as if the land itself had been shaped by some slow and patient hand, waiting quietly for someone to notice its promise. Constantine notices. In the quiet corridors of his own thoughts, far removed from the roar of legions or the clatter of Senate debate, he begins to see not a small fishing town, but a vision. He sees walls rising along those 7 hills, catching the sunset in soft amber light. He sees ships gliding gently into a harbour so calm it barely stirs. He sees a city that need not fear the raiders who might someday cross the western frontiers, a city protected by water on nearly every side, a city that could breathe easily between 2 seas and 2 continents, watching over both without being consumed by either. Let your mind rest here for a moment, dear listener, on the stillness of that harbour. Imagine the Golden Horn at dusk, its surface the colour of dark honey, reflecting the last soft light of the setting sun. Imagine the faint, distant cry of gulls circling lazily above the water, their calls fading slowly into silence as evening settles in. Imagine the gentle creak of fishing boats returning home, their oars dipping softly, rhythmically, into water that barely ripples beneath them. There is no rush here. There is no urgency. There is only the slow, patient rhythm of a place, waiting quietly to become something more. In the year 324, Constantine makes his decision. He will not build an entirely new city from nothing, as legend sometimes likes to imagine. Instead, he will take this small, sleepy town of Byzantium and transform it, slowly and deliberately, into something vast and new. He will call it New Rome, though history, in its quiet affection, will soon come to know it by another name, Constantinople, the city of Constantine. Imagine now the slow beginning of that transformation. Imagine surveyors walking the 7 hills in the soft morning light, their sandals brushing gently through dew-covered grass. Imagine the quiet scratch of stylus on wax tablet as architects sketch the rough outlines of new walls, new avenues, new forums. There is no chaos in this vision, no frantic hammering or shouted commands. Instead, picture a slow and steady procession of labourers moving stone by stone, each block lifted with care, each foundation laid with patience, as though the builders themselves understood that they were not simply constructing walls, but weaving something eternal into the very bones of the earth. Let us walk together, gently, along the edge of one of these new avenues, still half finished, its paving stones catching the golden light of late afternoon. The air smells faintly of fresh-cut stone, and the sharp, clean scent of pine timber stacked along the roadside. Somewhere nearby, unseen, a blacksmith's hammer taps softly against metal, the sound muffled and distant, like a heartbeat heard through thick wool. Merchants have begun to arrive already, drawn by rumours of the Emperor's grand project, setting up modest stalls along the widening streets. Imagine the soft murmur of their voices as they call out prices for olives, for bread, for bolts of undyed linen, their words blending into a low, comforting hum, like the distant sound of a stream running over smooth stones. As the sun begins to set on this half-built city, imagine the sky deepening into shades of rose and amber, the light catching on the pale stone of new walls not yet weathered by time. Workers lay down their tools slowly, wiping dust from their hands, speaking quietly among themselves as they make their way towards small fires where evening meals are beginning to simmer. The scent of wood smoke drifts gently on the breeze, mingling with the salt air rising from the harbour below. Somewhere in the distance, a lone flute plays a slow, wandering melody, its notes rising and falling like the gentle swell of the sea. Constantine, we are told, spends much time walking these unfinished streets himself, often in the quiet hours just after dawn or just before dusk, when the light is soft and the noise of construction has not yet begun, or has already faded into rest. Imagine him standing upon one of the 7 hills, looking down toward the harbour, watching small boats drift lazily across water, turned silver by the rising moon. In this quiet moment, he is not a conqueror, not a general, not even entirely an emperor. He is simply a man standing at the edge of the sea, imagining a future he will never fully see, content in knowing that the stones he lays today will still be standing long after his own name has softened into legend. The construction of the city unfolds slowly across several years, though in our story tonight time itself begins to blur and soften, the way memories often do just before sleep. Great walls begin to rise along the landward edge of the peninsula, thick and steady, built not from fear but from quiet confidence, a promise that whatever storms might come from the west, this city would remain sheltered and calm. Imagine the sound these walls might have made as they grew, stone settling upon stone with a soft, muffled thud, echoing gently across the hillsides in the cool morning air. At the heart of the growing city, plans take shape for a great open space, a public gathering place modelled on the forums of old Rome, though softened here by the particular light and air of this new eastern capital. Nearby, foundations are laid for a grand oval arena, a hippodrome, where one day chariots will race beneath cheering crowds, though tonight, in our gentle telling, it exists only as a quiet outline traced in packed earth, waiting patiently for its future. Let us not rush toward that future tonight. Let us simply imagine the stillness of this space in its earliest form, empty and silent beneath a wide sky, dust settling softly in the fading light. Consider, too, the harbours that curve gently along the city's edges, deepened and improved to welcome ships from across the Mediterranean world. Imagine merchant vessels arriving slowly from distant ports, their sails loosened and lowered as they glide into the calm waters of the Golden Horn. Picture the soft splash of anchors dropping into still water, the low creak of wooden hulls settling into rest after long voyages. Sailors step ashore into streets still fragrant with fresh mortar and cut stone, their footsteps unhurried, their voices low with the quiet fatigue of a long journey's finally ended. As the city continues to grow, so too does its spiritual character. Constantine, having embraced the Christian faith earlier in his reign, ensures that this new capital reflects a gentle blending of old and new. Ancient temples that once stood upon these hills are joined, slowly and without violence in our telling, by new churches, their modest domes rising quietly among older columns and rooftops. Imagine the soft light of oil lamps flickering behind unfinished church walls in the evening hours, casting long, gentle shadows across freshly laid stone floors. Somewhere within one of these early sanctuaries, a small group gathers in hushed prayer, their voices barely rising above a whisper, blending softly with the distant sound of waves against the harbour wall. Let your breathing slow further now, matching the unhurried rhythm of this ancient evening. Imagine the city as it might have appeared from a fishing boat drifting quietly upon the darkening waters of the Bosporus, small lights beginning to flicker to life along the 7 hills, one by one, like stars slowly emerging in a clearing sky. From this distance, the unfinished walls and half-built forums soften into a gentle silhouette, a promise of grandeur not yet fully realized, resting quietly beneath the first pale stars of evening. On the 11th day of May, in the year 330, the city is formally dedicated, though even this moment so significant in the pages of history unfolds in our story with quiet ceremony rather than triumphant fanfare. Imagine soft processions moving slowly through freshly paved streets, priests and officials walking with measured, unhurried steps, their robes catching the golden light of late spring. Imagine the low, resonant sound of hymns rising gently into the warm air, mingling with the distant cry of gulls circling above the harbour. There is celebration here, yes, but it is a celebration without harsh noise or violent excess, more akin to a deep exhale after a long and careful labour, a quiet acknowledgement that something lasting has finally been set into motion. As night falls upon this newly dedicated city, let us imagine its earlier streets settling into rest for perhaps the very first time as a true capital. Lanterns dim slowly in windows along quiet avenues. The murmur of daytime commerce fades into silence, replaced by the soft rhythm of waves against harbour walls and the distant comforting call of a night bird somewhere among the hillside gardens. Fishermen's boats rock gently at anchor, their wooden hulls creaking softly in time with the tide. Above the city, framed by 2 seas and 2 continents, the sky stretches wide and dark, scattered with countless stars, indifferent and patient, much as they had been before this city existed, and much as they would remain long after its stones eventually crumbled and were rebuilt again by later hands. In the quiet hours of that first true night, imagine the emperor once more standing upon his hill, looking out over the dim shapes of walls and rooftops silvered faintly by moonlight. He cannot know, of course, all that this city will become across the centuries ahead. He cannot know of the golden mosaics that will one day shimmer within great dome churches, nor of the emperors and empresses who will walk these streets long after his own name has faded into distant memory. He cannot know of the sieges this city will one day withstand, nor of the quiet centuries of scholars copying ancient texts by candlelight within its walls. Tonight, in this earliest moment, he knows only the stillness of the harbour, the soft sound of water against stone, and a quiet, steady certainty that something enduring has been set gently into motion. Let this image settle softly into your mind now, dear listener, as your own body grows heavy and still. A city cradled between two seas, its stones still pale and new, its harbours calm beneath a canopy of stars, waves lapping gently, endlessly, against ancient shorelines, lanterns dimming one by one along quiet hillside streets. Somewhere in the darkness, a boat creaks softly at anchor, rocking in slow, comforting rhythm. The scent of salt air drifts gently through open windows, mingling with the last faint traces of incense from a small, unfinished church nearby. Nothing here demands urgency. Nothing here requires you to remember or understand. There is only the slow unfolding of stone and time, the quiet birth of a city that will sleep and wake for 11 centuries, standing patiently through storms and stillness alike. As we close this first quiet chapter of our journey together, let yourself drift gently along with the tide of this ancient harbour. The city of Constantine rests now beneath a wide and silent sky, its future still unwritten, its walls still cool from the labour of many patient hands. Somewhere far above, the same stars that watched over this city's birth continue their slow, silent turning, indifferent to empires, indifferent to time itself, offering only quiet, steady light to those willing to rest beneath them. Let your breathing settle fully now into that same slow rhythm as the waves continue their gentle whisper against ancient stone, carrying you softly, softly towards sleep. 2 centuries pass now, softly, the way a single night sometimes seems to fold itself into a single breath. The stones that once lay pale and new along those 7 hills have grown warm with age, weathered gently by centuries of salt wind and sunlight. The city that Constantine once imagined from a quiet hillside has grown into something vast and gleaming, its harbours deeper, its streets wider, its walls thickened by the careful hands of generations who came after him. And within this flourishing city, in the 6th century after the birth of Christ, a new emperor now walks the same marble corridors where Constantine once dreamed his first dreams. His name is Justinian, and tonight, as we drift gently into his story, imagine him seated quietly within a private chamber of the great palace, its walls lined with cool marble the colour of sea foam, catching the last soft light of a setting sun through tall, narrow windows. The air here carries the faint, warm scent of beeswax candles, mingling gently with the deeper, earthier fragrance of frankincense, drifting in from some nearby chapel where evening prayers have only just concluded. Justinian sits bent slightly over a table scattered with unrolled parchment, his fingers moving slowly across page after page of ancient Roman law, accumulated across 7 long centuries of emperors and jurists, tangled and overgrown now like an old garden left too long untended. His ambition tonight is quiet, patient, Unlike the loud ambitions of conquerors who came before him, he wishes to gather this vast, sprawling body of law and shape it gently into something clear, something lasting, something future generations might hold in their hands like a single smooth stone rather than a heap of scattered pebbles. Somewhere nearby, in a quiet scriptorium lit by flickering oil lamps, scholars labour long into the night, their reed pens, scratching softly across fresh parchment, their eyes tired but their hands steady, slowly weaving together what history will one day call the Code of Justinian. Imagine the stillness of that room. Shelves lined with tightly rolled scrolls, their edges soft and worn from years of careful handling. The low murmur of scholars conferring quietly among themselves, their voices barely rising above a whisper so as not to disturb the delicate concentration filling the air. Beside Justinian, in this golden hour of empire, stands a woman whose quiet strength shapes the very throne itself. Her name is Theodora, and her story carries within it a resilience worth resting upon tonight. Born far from palace halls, into a family connected with the great hippodrome nearby, her early life held little promise of the marble corridors she now walks with such calm certainty. Imagine her now, moving slowly through the palace gardens in the cool hour just after sunset, her silk robes whispering softly against manicured hedges, the scent of jasmine and citrus blossoms drifting gently on the evening air. Fountains murmur quietly nearby, their water catching the last pale light of dusk, scattering it into soft, shifting patterns upon smooth marble basins. She pauses beside a low branch heavy with blossoms, her expression thoughtful, at peace within walls that once seemed impossibly distant from the life she was born into. Together, this emperor and empress turn their shared attention toward a project that will come to define their reign more than any law or any triumph. They wish to build a church so vast, so filled with light, that those who enter it might feel, if only for a moment, as though heaven itself had been drawn gently down to rest upon the earth. This church will be called Hagia Sophia, and its construction unfolds slowly across 5 patient years, becoming, in its own quiet way, a kind of meditation. Let us walk together now toward the site of this great undertaking, still wrapped in scaffolding as artisans labour beneath a warm midday sun. Imagine the soft ring of chisels against stone, a gentle rhythmic percussion echoing across the construction site, blending with the distant murmur of the sea beyond the city walls. Massive marble columns, brought from distant quarries across the empire, rest patiently on their sides, awaiting the careful hands that will lift them into place. Their surfaces, still rough in places, hint at the smooth, gleaming beauty they will one day possess, veined in soft greens and warm golds, like slow rivers frozen within stone. At the heart of this undertaking rises the dome, an achievement so delicate that even its architects must have paused, from time to time, in quiet wonder at their own ambition. Imagine the vast curve of this dome taking shape slowly against the sky, its base ringed with a delicate crown of windows designed to allow soft streams of sunlight to pour inward, uninterrupted, creating the gentle illusion that the entire structure floats, weightless, upon light itself rather than resting upon solid stone. Even now, in its unfinished state, imagine standing beneath this rising dome as afternoon light filters down through half-completed window frames, dust drifting lazily in golden beams, settling softly upon the marble floor below. As the church nears completion, imagine teams of artisans beginning the slow, patient work of covering its walls and ceilings in mosaic. Picture small squares of glass and stone, no larger than a fingertip, each one carefully cut and set by hand, some backed with thin sheets of gold leaf that catch and scatter candlelight into 1,000 tiny shifting points of brightness. Imagine the soft click of tiny tesserae being placed one by one into wet plaster, a sound so quiet it can barely be heard above the murmur of distant prayer, and yet one that, multiplied across months and years, slowly transforms bare stone walls into shimmering fields of gold, blue, and deep emerald green. Let your breathing settle further now into slowness, matching the unhurried patience of these ancient artisans. Imagine standing quietly within the nearly finished church as evening approaches, the vast interior bathed in soft amber light filtering through high windows. The scent here is rich and layered, cool stone mingling with the warm, sweet trace of beeswax candles burning steadily in tall bronze stands, and beneath it all, the deeper, earthier fragrance of frankincense curling slowly upward in thin ribbons of smoke. Somewhere in the distance, unseen choir voices begin a soft, low chant, their harmonies rising and falling gently, filling the vast space with sound that seems to hover, suspended, much like the dome itself. On the day of its dedication, imagine Justinian standing quietly at the threshold of this completed church, gazing upward into the vast golden dome above him, the weight of years of patient labour finally settling into stillness around him. We need no loud triumph to feel the depth of that moment tonight. We need only imagine the soft hush that falls over the gathered crowd as sunlight pours through the dome's ring of windows, illuminating countless mosaics in slow, shifting patterns of gold and blue, as though the very walls themselves were breathing gently in the fading afternoon light. Beyond the walls of this great church, the city itself continues its slow, golden rhythm of daily life. Imagine the markets nearby, filled with silks brought from distant eastern lands, their colours rich and deep, rippling softly in the warm sea breeze. Merchants call out gently, their voices blending into a low, comforting hum, offering spices whose fragrance drifts through narrow streets, cinnamon and pepper mingling with the salt air rising from the nearby harbour. Bolts of fine cloth rest carefully upon wooden tables, catching soft afternoon light, shimmering faintly with threads of gold. Not far from these markets, imagine the great harbour itself, filled with ships resting at anchor, their hulls rocking gently upon calm water. Sailors move unhurried along the docks, exchanging quiet greetings, their voices carrying softly across still water. Somewhere nearby, a fisherman mends his nets patiently, his hands moving in slow, familiar rhythm, the rope whispering softly against his calloused fingers. The scent of salt and drying fish mingles gently with the warmer, sweeter aroma of fresh bread baking in a nearby oven, its scent drifting lazily on the evening air. Let us turn our attention now, gently, toward the palace itself, where Justinian and Theodora often retire in the cool hours of evening. Imagine soft lamplight glowing warmly through tall windows overlooking the sea, spilling gently onto marble balconies below. Picture the two of them seated quietly together, perhaps sharing a simple evening meal of olives, bread and wine, their conversation low and unhurried, the weight of empire momentarily set aside in favour of quiet companionship. Beyond their window, the Sea of Marmara stretches out in the darkening evening, its surface catching the last pale light of dusk, scattered here and there with a soft glimmer of distant ships' lanterns. There is turbulence woven quietly into this golden age as well, though we touch upon it tonight only briefly, like a passing shadow across still water. Early in Justinian's reign, unrest had once swept through the crowded stands of the great hippodrome nearby, and for a time the very foundations of the throne seemed uncertain. It is said that Theodora herself in that difficult hour spoke with quiet resolve, steadying those around her with calm, unwavering courage. We need not dwell upon the storm itself tonight. We need only remember that after every storm, calm water returns, and the city, much like the sea surrounding it, settled once more into peaceful rhythm. Beyond the city's walls, Justinian's ambitions stretch further still. Distant campaigns unfolding across the Mediterranean world, reclaiming lands in Italy and North Africa once held by ancient Rome. Tonight, these campaigns drift through our story softly, like half-remembered dreams rather than immediate events, distant echoes of trumpets carried faintly on the wind from far-off shores. We do not need to follow every soldier or every siege tonight. We need only imagine the quiet satisfaction with which news of distant victories might arrive at the palace, carried gently by messengers whose sandals are dusty from long roads, their voices calm as they deliver word of an empire once more stretching its arms wide across old Roman lands. As night falls fully over the city, let us imagine Hagia Sophia standing quietly beneath the sky, scattered with countless stars, its great dome silhouetted softly against the darkness, its windows still faintly glowing with the last traces of candlelight from evening prayers within. Imagine the harbour nearby settling into stillness, ships resting at anchor, their lanterns dimming one by one like tired eyes finally closing. Somewhere within the palace, Justinian and Theodora too prepare for rest, the weight of empire momentarily set aside, replaced by the simple comfort of soft bedding and quiet, steady breathing. Let this image settle now into your own mind, dear listener, as your body grows heavy and still. A golden dome floating gently in candlelight, its mosaics shimmering faintly even in darkness. A harbour filled with ships resting peacefully at anchor, water lapping softly against ancient stone. Streets grown quiet, their markets closed, their lanterns dimmed. Somewhere nearby, a fountain continues its gentle murmur in a moonlit garden, water trickling softly over smooth marble. The scent of frankincense lingers faintly in the cool night air, mingling with the deeper, saltier breath of the sea beyond the walls, carrying you softly, softly towards sleep. As the golden dome of Hagia Sophia settles into the memory of that resting city, the years continue their slow, unhurried march forward, the way tide follows tide without ever needing to be told. We drift now beyond the reign of any single emperor or empress, beyond the marble halls of any single palace, into something quieter and more enduring still. The everyday rhythm of life along the Bosporus, a rhythm that repeats itself gently across centuries, changing little even as emperors rise and fade like passing clouds. Imagine, if you will, the first pale light of dawn breaking softly over the water, the sky shifting slowly from deep indigo into gentle shades of rose and pearl grey. Along the shoreline, fishermen are already awake, their small wooden boats gliding quietly out from the harbour, oars dipping into water so still it seems almost reluctant to be disturbed. Listen closely, and you might hear the soft rhythmic creak of oarlocks, the faint splash of water against weathered wood, the low murmur of fishermen exchanging quiet greetings across the calm surface of the strait. Their nets, coiled neatly at their feet, smell faintly of salt and hemp, worn soft by years of handling. As the sun climbs higher, its light catches the surface of the water in scattered flashes of silver and gold, and the fishermen cast their nets in slow, practiced arcs, the fine mesh unfurling gently before settling beneath the surface with barely a ripple. Let your mind rest here on the quiet patience of this daily ritual, repeated morning after morning, generation after generation, long after the great emperors of the Golden Age have passed into memory. There is comfort in this repetition, dear listener, the way there is comfort in your own breath rising and falling without needing to be thought about. The fishermen wait, their boats rocking gently on the tide, the only sound the soft lapping of water against wood, and the distant occasional cry of a gull wheeling overhead before settling once more into silence. As the morning deepens, the city itself begins to stir. Imagine narrow streets winding upward from the harbour, their stones smoothed by centuries of footsteps, still cool from the night air, but beginning now to warm gently beneath the climbing sun. Shutters open slowly along the fronts of small stone houses, and the scent of fresh bread begins to drift from unseen ovens, warm and yeasty, mingling with the sharper, cleaner scent of olive oil poured into wide clay dishes. Somewhere nearby, a baker calls out softly to a neighbour, their voices low and unhurried, carrying easily on the still morning air. Let us walk together now through the marketplace as it slowly comes to life, stalls opening one by one beneath awnings of undyed linen that ripple gently in the light morning breeze. Imagine baskets overflowing with olives, dark and glistening, their surfaces catching the sunlight in small oily gleams. Nearby, clay jars hold golden olive oil, their necks wrapped in soft cloth to keep out dust. Merchants arrange bundles of dried herbs, their fragrance rising softly into the warm air, rosemary and thyme mingling with the deeper, warmer scent of cinnamon bark brought from distant eastern lands. Imagine your own footsteps moving slowly through this scene, unhurried, pausing occasionally to admire a length of dyed wool, deep crimson or soft amber, draped carefully over a wooden rail. The sound of the marketplace itself is a gentle hum rather than a clamour, a low murmur of voices bargaining softly, coins exchanged with quiet clinks, the occasional soft laugh shared between old friends meeting over a stall of fresh fish still glistening from the morning's catch. Children move through the crowd unhurried, their small feet padding softly along sun-warmed stones, pausing here and there to watch a potter shaping wet clay on a slowly spinning wheel, his hands moving with the same unhurried patience as the fisherman at dawn. As midday approaches and the sun climbs higher still, imagine the city settling into a slower, quieter rhythm, the kind of stillness that seems to settle over warm places in the hours just after noon. Shutters are drawn partway against the brightest heat of the day, and the streets grow quiet, the marketplace thinning as merchants retreat into the cool shade of their stalls. Somewhere nearby, the soft trickle of a public fountain offers a gentle counterpoint to the stillness, its water spilling steadily over smooth stone into a wide basin below, where a few doves have gathered to drink, their soft cooing blending gently with the sound of falling water. Let us drift now toward one of the city's many bathhouses, a place of particular comfort in the rhythm of Byzantine daily life. Imagine stepping through a heavy wooden door into a space filled with warm, humid air, the scent of eucalyptus and warm stone rising gently around you. Soft light filters down through small round openings in the domed ceiling above, scattering in gentle beams across a floor of smooth marble tiles, cool and slightly damp beneath bare feet. The sound here is entirely its own. The soft splash of water poured slowly from bronze basins, the low murmur of quiet conversation between bathers reclining on marble benches, the gentle hiss of steam rising from heated stones nearby. Imagine sinking into warm water in one of the bath's many pools, the heat seeping slowly into tired muscles, easing away the small aches of a long morning's work, your own breathing slowing to match the unhurried rhythm of the space around you. As afternoon light softens and lengthens, imagine returning to the quieter residential streets away from the marketplace, where elders rest in the shade of small courtyards, seated on simple wooden stools beside pots of fragrant basil and mint. Their conversation is low and unhurried, punctuated by long, comfortable silences, the kind shared only between people who have known each other's company for many years. Nearby, in the soft shade of an olive tree, children play a quiet game with smooth stones, their laughter light and infrequent, more a gentle ripple than any loud commotion. Let your breathing settle further now, matching the slow unfolding of this ordinary afternoon. Imagine a weaver seated at her loom near an open window, the soft rhythmic clack of the shuttle passing back and forth through threads of undyed wool, slowly building rows of fabric that will one day become a simple tunic or a warm winter cloak. The sound of her work is almost musical in its repetition, steady and calming, much like the sound of waves against a distant shore. Beside her, a small oil lamp burns low even in daylight, its flame barely visible, kept lit more from habit than necessity. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western hills, imagine the city's many small churches beginning to fill with soft evening light, their modest domes catching the last golden rays of the day. Step gently, in your mind, through the open doorway of one such chapel, where the air inside is cool and still, scented faintly with beeswax and the lingering trace of incense from an earlier hour of prayer. Along the walls, painted icons gaze outward with calm, patient expressions, their halos rendered in soft gold that seems to hold the last light of day even as the room around them dims. A single candle burns steadily near the altar, its small flame flickering gently, casting soft shadows that stretch and shrink across the stone floor. Let us imagine too the quiet work of scholars within a nearby monastery, their days structured around long hours of careful, patient labour. Picture a small room lined with wooden shelves, each one holding neat stacks of parchment and vellum. The air here carrying the dry, papery scent of old books mingled with the sharper tang of ink, freshly ground from soot and gum. A monk sits bent over a low writing desk, his reed pen moving slowly and deliberately across the page, copying ancient words with careful, practiced strokes, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have been lost to the slow erosion of time. Outside his window, the sound of evening birds settling into nearby trees drifts in softly, mingling with the distant, ever-present murmur of the sea. As evening deepens into early night, imagine the marketplace stalls now closed, their awnings rolled and tied, the stones beneath them swept clean by careful hands. Lanterns begin to flicker to life along the main avenues, their warm light spilling softly onto worn paving stones, casting long, gentle shadows that stretch and sway with each small gust of evening breeze. The scent of the day's cooking fires lingers faintly in the air, mingling with the cooler, saltier breath rising steadily from the harbour as the temperature begins its gentle evening decline. Let us walk once more toward the water's edge as full darkness settles over the city. Imagine the harbour now, its surface catching the soft silver light of a rising moon, small fishing boats resting quietly at anchor, their hulls rocking almost imperceptibly on water grown calm and still. Somewhere nearby, a lone figure sits at the end of a stone pier, a fishing line resting loosely in his hands, in no particular hurry to catch anything at all, content simply to sit within the stillness of the evening, listening to the soft, steady lapping of water against ancient stone. Above the city, imagine the sky deepening into a rich velvet darkness, scattered gradually with countless stars, indifferent and patient, the same stars that watched over Constantine's first foundations, the same stars that will watch over centuries still to come. A soft breeze moves gently through the narrow streets, carrying with it the mingled scents of salt water, cooling stone, and the last faint traces of incense drifting from a chapel door left slightly ajar. Somewhere in the distance a night bird calls once softly, before falling silent again, its voice absorbed into the vast, comforting quiet of the sleeping city. Let this image rest fully in your mind now, dear listener, as your own body sinks deeper into stillness. a city breathing slowly through its ordinary hours, fishermen resting after a long day's work, weavers setting aside their looms, scholars closing their books by the last light of a single candle, streets grown quiet and dim, their lanterns burning low, their stones still faintly warm from the day's sun. Somewhere nearby, a fountain continues its endless gentle murmur, water spilling softly over smooth marble into a basin touched by pale moonlight. The sea beyond the harbour breathes in slow, steady rhythm, its waves folding gently against ancient stone, over and over, patient and unhurried, carrying the whole sleeping city, and you along with it, softly, softly, toward the deepest and most peaceful rest. Centuries continue their slow drift forward, the way clouds move across a wide summer sky without ever seeming to hurry. The city that once knew the golden peace of Justinian's reign has aged further now, its walls weathered by salt wind, its stones softened by centuries of footsteps and rain. It is the 7th century, and though the empire has changed in ways too vast for any single night's telling, its heart still beats steadily along the same familiar shores, the same quiet harbour, the same 7 hills rising gently toward a sky unchanged since the days of Constantine. Let us turn our attention now, gently, toward the great walls that encircle the landward edge of the city, walls first strengthened long ago and added to steadily across generations. Imagine standing before them in the soft light of early morning, their surface a warm weathered grey, streaked here and there with pale lichen that has taken root in the shelter of ancient stone. These walls rise in great patient tiers, one behind another, thick and solid, built not from fear but from quiet confidence, a promise that whatever storms might gather beyond the horizon, the city within would remain sheltered and calm. Their height is impressive without being harsh, their strength steady rather than aggressive, much like an old and patient guardian who has stood watch for so long that vigilance itself has become simply another form of rest. In this era, distant armies have on occasion gathered beyond these walls, drawn from lands far to the east, hoping to test the city's ancient defences. We speak of this tonight only softly, dear listener, as one might speak of distant thunder heard from beneath warm blankets, aware of the storm's presence but untouched by its force. Imagine watchfires burning steadily along the battlements after dusk, their flames small and steady against the darkening sky, tended by soldiers who move along the walls with slow, unhurried patience, their footsteps echoing softly against ancient stone. There is no urgency in their movements tonight, only the quiet rhythm of routine, the comfort of familiar duty performed beneath a canopy of stars that have watched over this same wall for centuries already. Let your mind rest for a moment on the sound of the wind moving along these ramparts in the deep hours of night, a low, steady murmur that rises and falls gently, carrying with it the faint scent of the sea beyond the walls and the drier, earthier scent of dust rising from roads beyond. Somewhere along the wall a soldier pauses in his slow patrol, resting his hand briefly against sun-warmed stone, still holding a trace of the day's heat even now, in the coolness of night. He looks outward, past the walls, toward hills fading into darkness, and then turns back toward the city, its lanterns glowing softly in the distance, small and steady, like a field of low stars fallen gently to rest among the rooftops. It is said that during these long centuries of occasional siege, the defenders of the city possessed a particular secret, a substance capable of burning even upon open water, deterring approaching ships with its strange and steady glow. We mention this tonight not as a moment of violence, but almost as a distant curiosity, like a story told softly around a fire, its details soft-edged and half-remembered. Imagine, if you wish, small vessels moving slowly along the water under cover of darkness, a faint orange glow visible briefly at their bows before fading again into the wider darkness of the strait, more like distant lanterns glimpsed across still water than any harsh act of conflict. The ships that once approached these walls, drawn by ambition or hope of conquest, found instead only patience, only walls that did not fall, only a harbour that remained calm no matter how many times the wider sea beyond grew restless. Let us turn now toward a different kind of stillness, one found not along the ramparts, but within the quiet halls of monasteries scattered gently across the city's hillsides. In this era, a great and gentle debate unfolds slowly within these walls, a question turning quietly in the minds of monks and scholars concerning the sacred images that fill so many of the city's churches. Some believe these painted icons, with their soft golden halos and calm, patient expressions, draw the faithful closer to the divine. Others believe such images distract from a purer, simpler form of devotion. We speak of this debate tonight not as conflict, dear listener, but as a slow, thoughtful breathing in and out, the natural rhythm of a faith reflecting quietly upon itself across many patient years. Imagine a small monastery chapel in the soft hours just after dawn, its interior cool and dim, lit only by a single narrow window through which pale morning light falls in a slender beam across the stone floor. Along the walls, painted icons rest in shadow, their gold leaf catching only the faintest hint of light, their expressions calm despite the uncertainty surrounding their fate. A group of monks sits quietly nearby, their voices low, their words unhurried, discussing questions that will not be resolved in a single morning, nor even in a single generation, but which unfold instead slowly, gently, like the seasons themselves changing one into another. The scent within this chapel is a soft blend of beeswax and old stone, mingled faintly with the drier fragrance of dust, settled undisturbed in corners rarely touched. Outside, beyond the chapel's single window, imagine the sound of doves settling onto a nearby rooftop, their gentle cooing rising and falling in soft repetitive rhythm, entirely unconcerned with the theological questions being weighed so carefully within. Let this contrast settle softly into your mind, the vast unresolved questions of faith held gently alongside the small, unchanging comforts of doves on a warm rooftop, both existing quietly together within the same unhurried morning. For a time in this era, some icons are removed from view, their painted surfaces covered gently with plain plaster, their golden halos hidden beneath layers of soft matte white. We do not dwell tonight on any harshness this may have carried for those who once found comfort in these images. Instead, imagine simply the quiet stillness of a church interior grown suddenly plainer, its walls now bare and pale, lit softly by the same beeswax candles as before, their flames flickering gently against smooth, undecorated plaster. There is a different kind of peace in this bareness too, dear listener, a simplicity that some found just as calming as the golden mosaics that had come before. And yet, as with all things carried upon the slow tide of history, this simplicity does not remain forever. In time, gently and without great upheaval in our soft telling tonight, the icons return. Imagine artisans once more mixing pigments in small stone bowls, grinding lapis lazuli into deep, rich blue, crushing golden ochre into warm, earthy tones. Imagine their brushes moving slowly and carefully across fresh plaster, restoring painted saints to walls that had rested plain and quiet for a time. The scent of drying pigment mingles softly with beeswax and incense once more, and slowly, patiently, the golden halos return to their places along the chapel walls, catching candlelight just as they once did generations before. Let us imagine too the quiet figure of an empress who oversees much of this gentle restoration, her presence calm and steady within the palace halls. We do not need loud drama to appreciate her role tonight, dear listener. We need only imagine her walking slowly through a newly restored chapel, pausing before a freshly painted icon, her expression thoughtful and at peace, watching soft candlelight flicker gently across gold leaf, still faintly fragrant with drying paint. Her footsteps echo softly against stone floors as she moves onward, unhurried, toward the palace gardens beyond, where the scent of jasmine drifts gently on the evening air. Beyond the walls of both monastery and palace, life along the city's roads continues its own steady, patient rhythm throughout this long era of quiet questioning. Imagine pilgrims travelling slowly along dusty roads that wind gently toward the city from distant provinces, their sandals worn thin from many days of walking, their pace unhurried despite the distance. Still ahead of them, they travel not for conquest or commerce, but simply for the quiet blessing of standing within these ancient walls, of glimpsing, even briefly, the golden dome that rises above all other rooftops in the city. Imagine their relief as the walls finally come into view along the horizon, pale and steady in the afternoon light, promising rest and shelter after many long days upon the road. As evening falls upon the city in this era of gentle change, let us imagine once more the watchfires along the great walls, small and steady against the deepening blue of dusk. Soldiers move slowly along their patrol routes, their voices low as they exchange quiet greetings, passing one another in the gathering dark. Below them, within the walls, the city itself settles into its familiar evening rhythm, lanterns flickering to life one by one along narrow streets, the scent of evening cooking fires drifting softly through open windows, mingling with the cooler, saltier breath rising from the harbour as the day's warmth slowly fades. Let your breathing slow further now, matching the steady, unhurried rhythm of this ancient nightfall. Imagine standing once more upon the great walls as full darkness settles over land and sea alike, the distant hills beyond the city fading into soft shadow, the harbour below glimmering faintly with scattered lantern light reflected upon calm water. A soldier pauses in his patrol, resting against sun-warmed stone, looking outward at a sky now scattered thickly with stars, the same stars that watched over the city's founding, the same stars that will watch over centuries still to come after this quiet era of questioning has long since settled into memory. Somewhere within the city below, imagine a small chapel where a single candle continues to burn steadily before a newly restored icon, its golden halo catching the flame's soft light in gentle, flickering warmth. The scent of beeswax and faint incense lingers in the still evening air, mingling softly with the deeper, earthier fragrance of stone cooling slowly after a long day beneath the sun. Outside, doves have long since settled into sleep upon nearby rooftops, their soft forms barely visible now in the gathering darkness, their earlier cooing replaced by the deeper hush of night. Let this image settle now fully into your mind, dear listener, as your body grows heavier still, sinking deeper into rest. Great walls standing steady beneath a canopy of stars, watchfires burning low and patient along ancient battlements, a chapel glowing softly with candlelight, golden icons resting once more in quiet peace along its walls, pilgrims sleeping peacefully in shelters just beyond the city gates, their long journeys finally rewarded with rest. The sea beyond continues its slow, steady rhythm against the base of the walls, waves folding gently against ancient stone, patient and unhurried, exactly as they have for centuries, exactly as they will for centuries still to come, carrying you now, softly, softly, toward the deepest and most peaceful sleep. The years continue their slow, patient turning, the way a single candle burns down gently through a long, quiet night. 2 centuries pass now since the walls last stood watch through their season of quiet questioning, and the city has grown steadier still, its stones settled deep into the earth, its harbours familiar with the passage of countless ships across countless generations. It is now the 9th century moving gently into the 10th and 11th, and something warm and golden begins once more to rise across the empire, much like sunlight spreading slowly across a wide valley after a long night of gentle rain. Let us imagine this renewal beginning quietly, almost imperceptibly, within the palace itself, where a new dynasty is settled into the rhythms of rule. We do not need to remember every name tonight, dear listener, only the soft, steady feeling of a court once more turning its attention toward beauty, toward learning, toward the quiet accumulation of art and knowledge that had, for a time, rested dormant like a garden beneath winter frost. Imagine the palace halls in this era, their marble floors polished until they catch and hold the afternoon light like still, pale water. Tall windows along one corridor allow warm sunlight to spill inward in long golden bars, illuminating soft drifts of dust suspended in the air, drifting slowly, unhurried, like tiny stars caught within a sunlit room. Somewhere within this palace, imagine a small scriptorium tucked away from the busier halls of state, its shelves lined neatly with manuscripts bound in soft leather, their pages made of fine vellum scraped smooth and pale. A scribe sits bent quietly over his work, illuminating the margins of a manuscript with delicate patterns of vine and leaf, his brush dipped carefully into a small dish of gold pigment mixed with binding medium. Imagine the soft, careful motion of his hand as he lays a thin line of gold along the curve of a painted letter, the metal catching whatever light falls across the page and holding it there, gently, like a small captured flame. The room is silent but for the occasional soft scratch of pen against parchment, and somewhere beyond the single window, doves murmur quietly on a nearby ledge, their voices blending into the room's stillness rather than disturbing it. Let your mind rest here a while longer, dear listener, on the patient work of these scribes and scholars, their labour stretching across long afternoons that seem to fold gently into one another with little distinction between one day and the next. Imagine shelves growing slowly fuller across the months, ancient texts once scattered and neglected now copied carefully anew, preserved in careful, unhurried strokes for generations not yet born. The scent of this room is dry and papery, mingled faintly with the sharper tang of ink freshly ground, and beneath it all the warm, comforting trace of beeswax from a single candle burning low nearby, its flame steady even in daylight, kept lit more from quiet habit than true necessity. Beyond the scriptorium, imagine the palace's grander halls prepared for the reception of foreign envoys, arriving from distant lands to witness firsthand the wealth and majesty of this renewed empire. Picture tall doors opening slowly to reveal a long chamber lined with silk curtains in deep shades of purple and gold, their fabric shifting gently in whatever breeze finds its way through open windows high above. Small silver bells, hidden cleverly among decorative bronze fixtures, chime softly and unexpectedly as visitors pass, their sound delicate and brief, like the first few notes of a song never fully completed. Imagine the visitors themselves pausing mid-step, momentarily caught by wonder, their eyes drawn upward toward a golden throne resting upon a raised dais, flanked by mechanical birds crafted from bronze and gold, their wings folded still and silent, waiting patiently for the rare occasion when their hidden mechanisms might cause them to sing. Let us drift now toward the mosaic workshops scattered quietly throughout the city in this era of renewed flourishing, where artisans continue the same patient work practiced by their predecessors centuries before. Imagine a small workshop bathed in soft afternoon light, its walls lined with shallow trays holding tiny cut squares of coloured glass and stone, sorted carefully by hue, deep sapphire blue, warm amber gold, soft moss green, each tray catching. Whatever light falls upon it in small scattered gleams. An artisan sits before a section of unfinished wall, his fingers moving slowly and deliberately as he presses each small tessera into a bed of fresh plaster, tilting it just slightly to catch the light in exactly the manner he intends. The sound of his work is soft and repetitive, a gentle click followed by a brief pause, followed by another gentle click, a rhythm as steady and calming as a slow heartbeat. Imagine the scene his mosaic depicts slowly taking shape across many patient weeks. Perhaps a solemn figure rendered in flowing robes of deep blue and gold, a halo formed from countless tiny golden squares, angled carefully to create the impression of soft, radiant light. As the afternoon light shifts slowly across the workshop, imagine watching the partially completed mosaic seem to shimmer faintly, different tesserae catching the sun at different moments, creating the gentle illusion of movement within an image that is, in truth, entirely still. Beyond the workshops, the wider city continues to flourish in this renewed golden light. Imagine the harbour filled once more with ships arriving from distant lands, their holds carrying silk from the east, spices whose fragrance drifts across the docks even before the crates are fully unloaded, fine glassware wrapped carefully in straw and cloth. Sailors move unhurried along familiar docks, their voices low and comfortable, exchanging news of distant ports with dock workers whose hands are roughened by years of steady labour. The scent here is rich and layered, salt water mingling with the sharper spice of cinnamon and pepper, the warmer trace of cedarwood crates freshly opened, the underlying sweetness of dried fruit brought from distant orchards. Let us walk once more through the wider city as evening approaches, its streets softened by the golden light of late afternoon sun. Imagine merchants beginning to close their stalls for the day, folding lengths of fine silk carefully away, their colours catching one final gleam of sunlight before being wrapped in protective cloth. Children run along the wider avenues, their laughter light and infrequent, more a gentle ripple in the quiet air than any loud disturbance. Somewhere nearby, a small group of musicians has gathered near a public fountain, their instruments simple, their melody unhurried, drifting softly through the surrounding streets like a slow, wandering breeze. Within the great churches of the city, imagine evening chant beginning to rise softly through incense-filled air, voices blending together in slow, deliberate harmony that seems to hover, suspended, beneath painted domes. The scent of frankincense curls upward in thin ribbons of smoke, catching the last soft light filtering through high windows before dispersing gently into shadow. Candlelight flickers steadily alongside altars, illuminating painted icons whose golden halos glow warmly in the dim, sacred stillness. Imagine standing quietly at the back of such a church as this chant continues, feeling its slow rhythm settle gently into your own chest, your breathing slowing further to match its unhurried pace. Let us turn now toward the palace once more, where court ceremonies continue their steady ritual rhythm, the same rhythm repeated across many generations with only slight variation from one reign to the next. Imagine a formal reception unfolding slowly within a grand hall, courtiers arranged in careful order according to rank and custom, their silk robes rustling softly as they bow in slow, practiced unison. There is comfort in this repetition, dear listener, the same comfort found in any well-known ritual performed many times before, the soft chime of ceremonial bells, the low murmur of formal greetings exchanged in careful measured tones, the gentle rustle of fabric as robes settle back into place after each slow bow. As night falls upon the city in this era of renewed brightness, Imagine lanterns glowing warmly along the edge of the Golden Horn, their light scattered gently across water grown calm and dark beneath the evening sky. Ships rest peacefully at anchor, their masts silhouetted softly against a horizon still faintly tinged with the last traces of sunset. Somewhere nearby, a night watchman walks slowly along the harbour's edge, his lantern swaying gently with each unhurried step, casting soft moving shadows across the stones beneath his feet. Let your breathing settle further now, matching the slow, steady rhythm of this golden evening. Imagine an aging scholar within the palace scriptorium, finally setting down his pen after a long day's careful work, closing the cover of a manuscript he has laboured over for many weeks. He sighs softly, not from weariness alone, but from quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from patient work well done. Beside him, a single candle burns low, its flame flickering gently in the still evening air, casting warm, wavering light across shelves filled with countless other manuscripts, each one a small, patient act of preservation, carried forward from one generation to the next. Beyond his window, imagine the wider city settling slowly into rest, lanterns dimming one by one along quiet streets, the distant murmur of the sea rising softly to fill the spaces left by fading voices and footsteps. Mosaic workshops stand silent now, their unfinished walls glowing faintly in whatever moonlight finds its way through open doorways, tiny gold tesserae catching pale light in scattered gentle gleams. The great churches, too, have grown quiet, their evening chant long since faded into stillness, though the scent of incense lingers still, faint and sweet, drifting softly through empty naves lit only by a few remaining candles. Let this image settle fully now into your mind, dear listener, as your body sinks ever deeper into rest. A city glowing softly with renewed golden light, its scholars closing their books, its artisans setting down their tools, its ships resting quietly at anchor beneath a canopy of stars grown thick and bright above the darkened water. Somewhere within the palace, an old candle continues to burn low and steady, its flame the last small point of light in a room otherwise given over to peaceful shadow. The sea beyond the harbour breathes on, slow and unhurried, waves folding gently against ancient stone exactly as they always have, carrying this whole golden sleeping city, and you along with it, softly, softly, toward the deepest and most peaceful rest. More centuries drift by now, softly, the way evening light fades gradually into full darkness, without any single moment marking the change. The golden brightness of the palace scriptorium, the mosaic workshops, the ceremonial halls filled with silk and bronze, all of this settles slowly into memory, layered over by the quiet passage of nearly 400 more years. The empire that once stretched wide across distant lands has grown smaller now, gentler in its remaining borders, though the city itself, cradled still between two seas, remains much as it has always been. Patient, weathered, and deeply loved by those who call it home. It is now the middle of the 15th century, and let us imagine gently an emperor whose name is Constantine, much like the very first emperor who once stood upon these same hills so many centuries before. There is a quiet symmetry in this, dear listener, a sense that history itself sometimes folds back softly upon its own beginnings. This later, Constantine walks the same palace corridors, gazes out upon the same harbour, listens to the same waves that his distant predecessor once listened to, though the weight resting upon his shoulders tonight is different, heavier, more uncertain than it once was in those earlier golden years. Imagine the palace in these final years, its halls still beautiful, though perhaps a little quieter now, a little less crowded with the ceremonial bustle of earlier centuries. Sunlight still filters softly through tall windows, catching motes of dust suspended gently in the still air, but there is a particular hush to these rooms now, the kind of hush that settles naturally over a place growing accustomed to smaller gatherings, fewer voices, a slower rhythm of daily life. Somewhere nearby, a single advisor speaks quietly with the emperor in hushed, measured tones, their conversation unhurried despite the seriousness of the matters they discuss, much like two old friends speaking softly beside a fire late at night. Beyond the palace walls, forces have gathered in the distance, drawn from lands across the strait, their numbers vast compared to those who remain within the city to defend it. We speak of this tonight gently, dear listener, not with alarm, but with the same soft distance we might use to describe a storm gathering far out at sea, visible only as a line of grey cloud along a distant horizon. Imagine standing once more upon the great walls, so familiar now from centuries of quiet watching, feeling the cool evening breeze move steadily along the ancient battlements, carrying with it the faint distant sound of drums carried on the wind from encampments beyond the walls, softened by distance into something almost like a heartbeat heard through thick fabric. Let your mind rest here a moment longer, on the quiet resilience of these walls, weathered now by more than 1,000 years of patient standing. Imagine the stone beneath your hand, cool and slightly rough, holding within it the memory of countless nights just like this one, soldiers walking slow patrols, watchfires burning steadily, the sea beyond breathing its endless, unhurried rhythm against ancient foundations. Whatever uncertainty gathers beyond these walls tonight, the stone itself remains calm, as stone always does, indifferent to the passage of years in a way that offers its own quiet comfort. Within the city, imagine life continuing in its familiar patterns even now, in these final gentle weeks. Fishermen still cast their nets each morning as pale light spreads slowly across the water. Bakers still fill the narrow streets with the warm scent of fresh bread. Somewhere in a quiet chapel, candles continue to burn steadily before golden icons, their light flickering gently across walls that have witnessed centuries of prayer. There is a particular tenderness in this ordinary continuation, dear listener, the way small daily rituals persist quietly, even as larger, more uncertain events unfold at the edges of memory. Let us imagine, gently, one final evening within the great church of Hagia Sophia, its vast dome still catching the soft, golden light of a setting sun, exactly as it always has since Justinian first stood beneath it many centuries before. Imagine the interior filled with a hushed and reverent stillness, worshippers gathered quietly within its vast space, there, voices rising together in slow, soft chant that seems to hover gently beneath the great dome, much as it always has. The scent of incense curls upward in thin ribbons of smoke, catching the last light filtering through high windows before dispersing softly into shadow. Candlelight flickers alongside altars, illuminating painted saints whose calm, patient expressions have watched over countless generations of quiet devotion. Let your breathing slow further now, matching the unhurried rhythm of this final gathering. Imagine the chant continuing softly, voices blending together in harmonies that seem to fill every corner of the vast space, rising gently toward the golden dome above before settling back down like a slow, warm exhale. There is no fear in this moment, dear listener, only a deep and quiet reverence, the kind that comes naturally at the closing of something vast and long remembered. Imagine standing quietly near the back of this great church, feeling the cool stone floor beneath your feet, the warm glow of countless candles surrounding you, the soft murmur of prayer rising and falling like gentle waves against a familiar shore. As this long evening deepens, imagine stepping back out into the cooling night air, the city around you settling into its familiar rhythm of dimming lanterns and quieting streets. The moon rises slowly over the water, casting a soft silver light across the harbour, where ships rest at anchor exactly as they have for centuries, their hulls rocking gently on water grown calm and still. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of drums continues its steady, muffled rhythm, softened further by the cool night breeze, blending almost peacefully with the closer, more familiar sound of waves lapping steadily against ancient stone. Let us imagine, gently, the passing of these final days as though watching them from a great and peaceful distance, the way one might watch autumn leaves drifting slowly from a tree, each one falling softly, unhurried, according to its own quiet timing. Whatever difficult moments unfold within these last days, we hold them tonight softly, at arm's length, choosing instead to rest within the deeper, more enduring truth beneath them, that this city, and all it created across 11 centuries, does not simply vanish, but rather transforms, the way a candle's flame might be carried gently to light another candle before the first finally grows still. Imagine scholars in these final days gathering their most treasured manuscripts, wrapping them carefully in soft cloth, preparing to carry them westward toward new cities, new libraries, new quiet rooms where candlelight will once again fall softly across careful, patient handwriting. Imagine the weight of these bundles light in their arms, though heavy with centuries of accumulated knowledge, poetry, lore, and careful observation of the stars. Picture their footsteps unhurried as they move toward waiting ships, their expressions calm, carrying with them not loss, but continuity. The quiet assurance that ideas, once written down and carefully preserved, do not truly disappear, but simply travel onward to new and welcoming shores. Let your mind rest now on this image of gentle continuation, dear listener, as your own body grows heavier still, sinking ever deeper into rest. Imagine the light of countless Byzantine candles carried forward invisibly across the centuries that follow, flickering quietly within new universities, new churches, new libraries built far from these original shores, yet still carrying something of the same golden warmth first kindled within this ancient city so many centuries before. The empire's laws live on softly within later legal traditions. Its art lives on within. Domes and mosaics inspired by the pattern first perfected here. Its scholars' careful copying preserved ancient wisdom that might otherwise have been lost entirely to time's slow erosion. As we imagine the final quiet moments of this long and golden story, let us return once more to the harbour, calm and silver beneath a rising moon, exactly as it was on that very first night so many centuries ago, when Constantine first stood upon a quiet hillside imagining a city not yet built. Imagine the water here, patient and unchanged, still catching moonlight in the same soft silver patterns it always has, indifferent to empires, indifferent to centuries, offering only its steady ancient rhythm to anyone quiet enough to listen. The city upon its shores may change hands, may change names, may change the language spoken softly in its markets and its churches, but the water itself continues on, unhurried, exactly as it always has. Let this final image settle now fully into your mind, dear listener, as your breathing grows slow and deep, your body sinking completely into rest. A great dome resting quietly beneath starlight, its golden mosaics dimmed now to soft shadow, waiting patiently for whatever new dawn might come. A harbour holding countless ships across countless centuries, water lapping gently, endlessly, against ancient stone. Manuscripts carried carefully westward. Candlelight passed gently from one quiet room to another. Knowledge preserved like embers carefully protected against the wind, ready to kindle new flames in new and distant hearths. The waves continue their soft, unhurried rhythm against the shore, just as they always have, just as they always will, carrying this whole ancient and beloved city, resting now at last into its long and peaceful sleep, and carrying you too, dear listener, softly, softly, into the deepest and most restful sleep of your own.